Welcome to the Migrant Resource Centre, Northwest Region Incorporated Diversity and Disability YouTube channel. Your Life, Your Voice program, where self-advocates and professionals in the disability sector are interviewed.
The Diversity and Disability Project would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we work and live and recognise their continued connection to land, water and community. We pay respects to elders past, present and emerging.
Nothing about us without us. We pay respects to all self-advocates who have worked hard over the years and still working tirelessly for their rights, supporting others with disabilities and human rights for all.
This channel is for people with disabilities who aspire to seek self-advocacy role models to inspire change in their everyday lives. Nothing about us without us. Choice and control are central themes. Every interview is as unique as you and I.
And it has our fundamental universal human rights ethos of respect for persons with disabilities, having their views heard and acknowledged. After all, it's all in the name. Your life, your voice.
Be the voice of change in your life.
Good day and welcome to another edition of Your Life, Your Voice. My name is Julie McNally and I'd like to welcome my co-host, Larissa McFarlane. Hi Larissa, how are you doing?
Hi Julie, I'm doing all right. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, yeah. Just coping with the cold weather at the moment. And today we'd like to welcome our guest interviewee, Julie McNally, who is the Voice at the Table project coordinator. Welcome, Julie.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great, yes. So, Larissa, would you like to kick off some questions, please?
Sure. So I would like to start by just asking Julie if you would like to just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about who you are.
Yep, Julie. So I work at Voice at the Table. So I do two roles there, but kind of coordinate the project and make sure everything's on track. But also support a peer worker to do the monthly meetups and send out VATT opportunities, advocacy opportunities to, I don't know where the mic is because I'm using, unless I use mic like a headset.
I'm getting a bit of a echo. Are you getting an echo, Larissa?
No, I think it's fine.
Okay.
I have got a headset somewhere, but yeah.
I think we should just continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I do the two roles. So which is good. So there's a team of about eight people at Voice at the Table. So we are a project that supports people with cognitive disabilities around having a voice. That's what it's all about. So a voice in their own lives, but also a voice on things like committees and consultations. So I guess our aim is to have more leaders in the community that have a cognitive disability, and I guess people more confident in knowing what their rights are and speaking up.
Can I just step in? Can you define for us, because there will be people in our audience who may not know exactly what cognitive disability is?
Yes, a good point, because I use all these words and you forget that, So breaking it down, we have people with intellectual disabilities and also acquired brain injury. So they're the communities that we support. And we also have a very strong within that, the nothing about us without us. So we employ people with both intellectual disabilities and an acquired brain injury. And as much as, I think we are always trying to get better, but including their voice in all the parts of the project and the decisions we make, and how we go about what we do. So,
I suppose we have spoken about the purpose and objective of the organisations
Yeah.
to a degree. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Not well, I guess, yeah. I mean, over time, I think we've kind of, because I think the project that I've only been around for the last 2 years, but the project started in 2016. So I know it's had different, kind of slight differences depending on the funding. So I think I know it started off as a pilot with Brain Injury Matters and SARU, the Self Advocacy Resource Unit. And then I think the state government in Victoria thought it was great and kind of funded it to particularly get people with cognitive disability onto boards and committees. And then over time, we've kind of got federal funding through what was the NDIA, now Department of Social Services. So, but I guess we try to kind of always maintain, I guess, trying to look at what the community are asking for. So the people with cognitive disability, asking them what they want, and trying to keep it on track that way so that we're not just doing something that doesn't meet people where what they're needing and what they're wanting. So that's, yeah, I guess our goal as much as possible is doing that.
Full disclosure, I actually was part of the beginning.
Yeah,
and
you probably know more than I do, Lara.
Well, it's different now, but I like it actually was 2015 that we started having conversations.
Yes, okay, yeah.
There was lots of talking, but you're right, the pilot started in 2016 at the beginning, and actually was also co-designed with Reinforce as well as Brain Injury Matters, along with SARU, and the main mover and shaker and vision maker of the project was Sue Smith. Really acknowledge the huge amount of work and labour of love that she did to get it off the ground in the very beginning. I think it's really important when we it's one of my passions actually, is recognising our history and where we've come from, and part of that is also recognising allies, because allies play a really big role in disabled history.
Definitely.
So I've got a disclosure too. Speaking about uncovering, so I am a graduate of Voice at Table.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether we did the course together, Larissa.
I'm pretty sure I was the trainer when you did it. I led the training for that delivery. Not that I feel like I was any better than anyone else in the room, but it was I did, had prepared the work. So I remember that time. I think it was in 2018, Julie.
I think you're right. Yes. So I've had different reincarnations of work in that time. And I must say, Voice at the Table was really good for me at that time, because at any time really, but I was coming through something with our friends at Centrelink, our friends, tongue-in-cheek friends. And, when you're connected to the wider disability network, it's great, because I was really stressed, and having others who have gone through things, and then they can refer you to different organisations. I was referred to the DRC, Disability Resource Unit, so everything I did was the correct path that I needed to do. But just having someone to bounce things off and was very comforting, and knowing that support is out there. And so I'd encourage people to think wider than one organisation. And so the disability sector is generally very connected. So we all know each other.
Yes.
A lot of us work with each other. And so, and in this sector, more than any other sector, we all need each other to some. We all need each other because we all have different skills, different interests.
Yeah.
That we all come together and help each other out at different times.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Julie. This is your interview, but I'm.
I know this is good. Learning for me too.
One of the things that I was so passionate about, when we first started the project and was so committed to, co-designing it and working with Sue, but was that it occurred to me around that time. I hope the landscape has changed because it's 8 years now since 2016, but that the training that we did, it was the first training that I'd done that was good, appropriate, accessible, and it was something like 18 years since I got my disability, and I have realised that there is very little appropriate training for people with cognitive disability around. There is training, but it's a bit shit and it's a bit naff and it's a bit like, this was gritty and real and had opportunities to have hard-hitting conversations and talk about what was important. And it was such a huge learning environment, but it just made me realise, wow, there's so little opportunities. And when people, particularly when people acquire a brain injury and they need to reskill up because they need to relearn, there's just so little opportunities because mainstream education is not always appropriate or accessible, but there are very few alternatives. So that's why I was really passionate about
I know, because I have like a physical disability, which is a bit different, but coming and working in this community and really getting that sense of how I think even more excluded that the community is, like with invisible disabilities, and that often when we talk about disability, we focus on other things like vision impairment or physical disability. So kind of seeing that a lot of things aren't set up or accessible for people within the cognitive disability community. So I think I've kind of learned a lot by listening to people's stories and kind of seeing the importance of voice at the table to not only, and I think a lot of people are being told you're not capable, you can't do that. So to kind of change that and to come together and challenge that, because we all have that internal kind of stuff as well. But then also with organisations, we do training for organisations as well, so that they can really understand what being accessible might mean. Even a meeting, which is what we kind of focus on. How do you do an accessible meeting? So kind of educating people. So when people do get linked to something, it is a good experience, hopefully. So, yeah.
I just love the diversity of voice at the table, and it really is a platform for all abilities.
Yes.
And two able-bodied people, and it's not their fault that they don't understand. Unless you walked a mile in someone's boxes, how would they know? But over the last, I suppose, 8 years or so, or 10 years, there's been a real push for lived experience.
Yes.
Lived experience consultations.
Yes.
And I would say that voice at the table was probably the instigator of that. There's another word that I can't think of, but I think it was the main instigator for the push for lived experience within organisations, within government, within all sorts of areas of society that wanted to be inclusive, didn't know what that meant, and are really benefiting. Government is really benefiting by our work. In really meaningful ways.
Because I think a lot of people want to be more inclusive, but they don't understand how, or they leave out people with cognitive disabilities in that accessibility conversation. So sometimes we kind of remind them and go, there's a big group of people that aren't getting their voices heard because you're not, providing the support or the, just accessible ways to say, I want to do that workshop, or advertising a workshop. And then when you get there, it meets your access needs. So,
And there's also, which I'm really proud to work with colleagues and clients with complex communication needs. I think they're pretty gross at their commitment and to make the world make the world aware of their opinions and their views and their needs, and making life better for other people with community complex communication needs.
Yeah.
So I take my hat off to all people in this space.
Yeah.
Would we want to move on, Larissa?
Sure. There's a question here about disability-led, and I don't actually think that is disability-led, but you could maybe tell me that it is. Can you tell me about the structure of that?
Yeah. I know. Look, to be honest, in the true sense of we're not a self-advocacy group in that really pure sense that self-advocacy is, like we're funded and designed in a different way, which I'm always honest with people, because we're a bit different. So I guess within that, I always look myself at trying to challenge myself to make sure that we're doing, co-design well and really including the lived experience, not in a really tokenistic kind of way, but trying to really properly do it, because we don't, we're peer-led in a way, we're disability-led in that we have a steering committee, but that's got a mix of people both with and without cognitive disabilities, and also as staff, there's a mix as well. So I guess in the pure sense we aren't, and I acknowledge that, I'm not but I guess, and I really do try to, and I think to work at VATT with or without a disability, you have to be really willing to jump on board and really kind of say the people that are working there that have the lived experience of cognitive disability are our experts, and that we include them in all the decision making and we consult them, and that's just part of the norm. So but yeah, we're not a pure kind of self-advocacy group the way we've been set up and funded. So
and there's no shame in that. I wasn't saying.
No, but I'm always honest with people, because sometimes people get frustrated, and so we kind of have to say, look, we're a bit different. So it does come, yeah.
How do you mean? In what way do people get frustrated?
I think because people, and I get it, would kind of want the whole, all of the VATT staff to be people with cognitive disability and run in a complete, a way that is just completely led by people within the community. So and I'm really happy to have those chats with people, because I acknowledge that I can understand having a disability, how I feel about that too. And there's always that, thing of, do you have to have that exact disability to work within the community? And I've had that conversation for years, working in the disability field, and I think it's a good one to have.
Yeah. So, I think it's actually really good that if people are raising the issue.
I do too.
5, 10, 15, just going back quite recently, but disability, the idea of disability-led was not understood and didn't really happen at all. There were so few disability-led things. So when people start asking about it, I think that's a good sign that there's an issue that you can have disability-led. So speaking of this, so I guess your steering committee is what drives
yes. Yep.
And that's made up of disabled and non-disabled people.
Yes.
Do you have can people nominate for that committee? How does that work? Do you have a changeover?
That's true. That's something I think is something to think about, because I know in my time I have been doing the steering committee for about a year. So in that time,
longer than that. You've been there longer than a year.
I have been there longer, but I wasn't doing the steering committee. But I think being more transparent in how we do all that stuff, I'm really now trying to make more of an effort to be, so that it's like there's more of a process of how you get on the steering committee if people want to do it. Like, we try to have a range. Like, I know of people with, because it is, I acknowledge, even intellectual disability, there's a big difference within that community, and also an acquired brain injury. So we try to have a mix of people with different disabilities, and also stakeholders, so funders, you know, people like a MIDA, things like that. So yeah.
And within the two different disabilities, there's also all the other intersections of our experience.
I know. Yeah, there's a whole lot. So you know, gender, there's multicultural, or, you know, there's a whole lot of, you know, how that we kind of talk about and make sure as best we can to be. And I don't know if we've always done that well. So I think it's always something to keep working towards. So
I look forward to seeing an expression of interest to join the steering committee coming up.
Yeah, well, that's sort of, because we know we recently did we looked at what, we called it something different, but a terms of reference for the committee. So, but we called it in more easy English, which is something we really try and do to be more accessible. So in the end, they called it like what you need to do to be on the steering committee. So, but within that, we didn't actually look at like how long should people, but it's something that's good to think about. Should you have like a year? It's a good thing to think about, and to get fresh people in and give more people an opportunity, which is something that I really want to try and do. So it's a good thing to think about, really, and can talk with them about. So yeah.
You spoke about like disabilities, and within SARU, which is where the VATT group sits with. Is that correct? We say that?
Used to. We're now with a MIDA.
MIDA.
So, but we're all under the same. SARA is part of a MIDA. So,
before Julie, I just want to clarify. So a MIDA is action for more independent. You better tell me because you work there.
Well, what does more independence in accommodation.
Okay.
So,
and a MIDA, apart from doing that sort of advocacy, individual advocacy and systemic advocacy around housing, it also does support, or as an umbrella for other organisations like SARU, which is the Self-Advocacy Resource Unit, which supports self-advocacy groups around Victoria, and then also VATT, which is where you come in.
And it's got an NDIS appeals team. But I think it's great the role that a MIDA really play an important role in that. So many advocacy groups around Victoria, they like auspice them, so they back them, do all the financials, help put in the funding, help support them. So they do a great, like a lot of those things would struggle to get those, you know, secure that funding and get that support. So they do a really great job at all that.
So is that for advocacy organisations in Victoria? They support.
Yeah. I do a lot of funding, like a lot of the you know, like New Wave or All Abilities, they all kind of actually fall under.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant, so I know SARU supports self-advocacy groups, but you said a MIDA supports advocacy groups?
Well, we're all part of a MIDA. That's the, so technically, like, even the Voice at the Table funding is actually a MIDA, like, you know, in the name of a MIDA. So, so I think they've got that good record, is that, you know, you can get funding and they'll help you manage all those, you know, things that can be tricky when you're a little group, like the finances, doing reporting if something comes up. So
and that's really important, because like even if you start up a self-advocacy group, get a bit of funding from government, there are all sorts of you have to jump with reporting and accounting, and let's face it, we can't have all the skills to do all that stuff.
No.
And it actually is quite complex.
And takes a lot of time.
A lot of time and a lot of knowledge to.
And that's something I know SARU recently was really them coordinating a self-advocate from all, I think it was about 10 self-advocacy groups in Victoria came together last week and met with the new NDIA CEO. So, you know, that kind of, because funding runs out, it's a bit like that. We don't know if we're getting funded again until like the last month. And so it creates a lot of issues. So I think to really advocate to get ongoing funding so that groups can just get on with what they're doing. And that would be amazing. So
Yeah, that's a constant struggle with
yes,
agency
yeah,
work,
yeah,
including the work Larissa and I do.
yeah, I know. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a drain. They're like, you think, you can, let's
yep,
let's let's get on with the work. I'd love to just get on with the work and not have to worry about
yeah,
next year's funding rounds, and yeah,
exactly.
it's
Yeah.
painful anyway. So yeah, so
So can I, oh, sorry, Julie.
no, go on, there you go.
I was going to say, so how, if I'm a disabled person, we might
Yeah.
have already, but I'm just, and I am a disabled person, but I'm a proud disabled person. If I'm a person with cognitive disability, intellectual or brain injury, and I want to get involved with VATT, how, and I'm not really sure how or what it can offer me, what's my first step?
Probably is to go to the website, and there's a phone number that you could ring, or there's a email that you can email, or a form you can fill in. So like whatever, however works best for people, I think, and their access needs, to give us a call. And we often do get people with disabilities doing that, and also organisations that come forward and go, we really want to include more people in our board and committee, but we don't know what we're doing. Can you support us? And also support, both the workers or the people on the board that are already on it, and then the people with disabilities that would like to be part of it. So yeah, I guess the first step is, the phone number or the email would be.
Great. And so if somebody wants to, learn some more, do some training, find out how to get it on a board, how often are you running training?
At the moment, because we had to get some new staff on board, which has been good, we've kind of done that. So we're actually changing, because we do training, the VATT, we call VATT grad training. So people that do have an intellectual disability or a brain injury. So we used to run like 6 sessions that people would have to do all of them. But we're actually changing it. So we're breaking it into modules, so bits, so that people can do, they might kind of want to redo a refresher, or kind of they might be confident in one area but want to do other stuff. So we're doing that. So we're hoping in the next couple of months that we'll be able to do the first one, which will be around the rights and like the different models of disability, that disability pride. We've added that in. So we've kind of gone to people and said, like within the community, and said, how could we do it better? Like, what should we include? So we're consulting a lot, like, to try and make it so it's really going to work the best. So, and also, so we're going to do that soon. And then the organisational training, we're hoping to start up again in the next couple of months as well. So I think the best way is people, ring us or email us, and then we can contact them when we've got some dates, which we will soon. Should be pretty good.
How do organisations, if they want training, how do they know about us? How do they sort of like contact and
That's a good
know
question.
what we can offer?
Often they look at the email and send it through. Often they've actually, which is nice, that they've often heard about it from someone else. They're often like, I've had a colleague do this years ago. They've spoken about it really positively. So often it's like that word of mouth thing as well. And because what we do is a bit unusual, like, as Lara was saying, there's not many groups. Like, they might do disability inclusion, but it's not kind of specifically for the community that we work and sort of focus on. So they usually find us.
And is it just available for Victorian organisations, or?
Yeah, at the moment it is, So, but then, we've got funding till mid next year, like a lot of the groups do with the latest round. So we're kind of looking at what to do, down, after that. So But yeah, at the moment it's Victorian funded. So yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
advertised in government departments, or like, is that like a possibility maybe to have a link to Voice at the Table on some
Yeah.
government-led sites?
Yeah, I hope so. And that's something I want to try and do in the next year, is that I know we're federally funded at the moment, but looking at the state disability plan and also the federal one too, but particularly the state one, there's so many things that are a good match. Like, they're kind of saying they want to include, organisations have to include more people with disabilities on consultations and make things more accessible when they do, and that people with disabilities need to have a voice in those things. So I feel like we need to, you know, get that relationship back that's stronger with the state government as well. So because there's a lot of things I think they're wanting to do that I feel and they do want to try, you know, the groups that do often get missed out, which is our community. I feel like they're wanting to include that. So yeah, definitely.
Larissa, go on.
Okay. All right. So how can you describe to me more about how VATT is breaking down ableist stereotypes within society, and how that then can also, you know, assist people to engage meaningfully with work and boards, or
I think I was thinking about this. There's sort of different things, because even I know the trainers, one that we have at the moment who has a disability, I think from even talking to her, that it's really even like, yeah, that internal ableism and the voice we have as like ourselves. I think it's been amazing to see her progress and growth, and her own, like, you know, like she'll say I'm a dummy, you know, that's what the voice inside says, and you're not capable. So seeing her do, you know, being this amazing trainer and get up in front of other people who may just have acquired a disability, be in a hard place in their life, you know, coming, you know, I guess managing all that, what that means, seeing her kind of thinking, wow, like, so I feel like, you know, she's not only kind of, and that, it's nice seeing people when they talk about that, like I came to that thinking, oh no, I can't do that. And then kind of seeing, you know, it's still a journey, but seeing them kind of like develop that over time, that they might then try something else, like have the confidence to try something else. And that also workers that come to the training that are disability workers of some sort, they're kind of seeing people doing amazing stuff that they might think they don't work, they don't do stuff. Like some people still have a really concrete way of thinking that around the disability community. So I think them just seeing that, you know, we hire and we have trainers with lived experience, and they are amazing. So I think it's kind of challenging the things at different levels, which I like. So
yeah, thanks. I just want to pick up on your reference to internalized ableism, because that's the issue for all of us. And we do talk about it being, you know, the voice in our head, but I just want to clarify that that is a voice that comes from the attitudes of society. It comes from the ableist sort of system that we live in, and that as disabled people, I would say all of us, there might be a few exceptions in the world, but pretty much all disabled people, we can't help but internalize those attitudes of society that says that disabled people are worth less and their voice is not less important. And we, you know, all through the segregation of everything like education and employment, all these things that happen for disabled people are all messaging that tells us that we're less, and we internalize that voice and then we perform it upon ourselves, which is what we call internalizing. So it's not, I just want to be careful that we're not like, that recognizing that this isn't us, that language that we use isn't necessarily because we have failed in some way. It's actually an impossible it's impossible to avoid taking on those attitudes of society. And that's why disability pride is so important, because it gives us a way to practice speaking back to that voice and reminding ourselves that that voice doesn't belong in us. That voice comes from the attitudes of society.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited that that was one of the changes that the training team decided to put in the training too. The VATT training is around that disability pride and that kind of stuff, because I think often people haven't had that opportunity to have that conversation.
I would actually say that maybe it disappeared, because in the beginning that was a big part of the training when I was doing it.
Not in my time. Like, we talk about the models of disability and different things, but I think something that has been suggested is, the Stella Young, like talking about like I'm really getting more into it in a way that in my time I haven't kind of seen. So, which I think is good. And I know for myself, growing up with a disability, that's why I got the tattoo of the Laura Hershey poem. And I know for me, and I know it's only my experience and it's different, but that it is about practicing being proud. And I know I'm not the one that, with the shame, but I think I felt ashamed a lot of my life and still do. You've got to make it okay for everyone else. And in my head, it does feel like my own, but it's good so for me, it was about practicing, and it's not always perfect, but, I think, so that's why I got that tattoo. It's like a constant reminder.
Can I suggest that when you do the next training and you have the bit on disability pride, that you take the group, if it's in person, which I hope it will be, because that will be beautiful, but take them just down the road to see the mural of amazing disability advocates that have created the space for us to be here today, and one of those being Stella Young. I'm not sure if you've seen it, Julie, but
I have. I went to, it's amazing. No, for sure. And I think that's on many levels of just people, like, they're part of that community, because I know we had a younger group of people last year that we trained. So they're at the completely different part of the journey, but even just thinking, oh, wow, like someone did this that has, and there's these people in the past, and kind of, they're in their 20 and it's all very new. So you talk to them about rights and they're like, what? So having that.
Well, sometimes young people are so much further down the line in terms of disability pride and knowing their rights than my generation. It's exciting for me.
I feel excited because I was saying that to Miranda, who I work with yesterday. I feel quite sad, but that people come not ever having those conversations or knowing that. And I know that I feel like, we're talking about this stuff, like, of course, but I know it's not, if you haven't, that we play that important role to really reinforce. No, you've got rights like everyone else, and this is what they are. And I think
that brings it back to why that is so important, really, is because of that segregation, and particularly for people who are living in group homes or really isolated, lots of us are, then we won't necessarily have come across the idea of rights. And it is completely new, and you don't just suddenly get it overnight. Like, there is practice involved, and hence the modules.
For some, like, people that are younger, it might be like we had to really change a bit of what we did to make it more relevant to them and where they're at in their journey, like what rights it might be for them, and in their, like what could help them understand some of it. And it was really amazing to see that some people that were going to like the group programs, work programs, for the first time were speaking up about why they weren't coming to class, because, like, for the first time we're actually having a voice, like after we did the training. So it's like it can start in your everyday life, that it's really nice to see the changes that happen. So
the conditioning that we face is, it takes a long time to undo.
I know, it's a constant. I know.
And I'm not really sure that we can fully undo it.
No, I feel it.
And I mean, like, I think about my life, particularly since 2011, since I've been in the sector. and my family ideal of work was physical work, which I wasn't good at. I wasn't strong enough, I wasn't fast enough, and that was the only reference or idea to work. But I was more of a policy, um, educated type of work. And even when I did find work in that sector, which I was successful like as an employee, um, it was sort of like poo-pooed, like, what you do is not really work. I'm like, for example, I get paid for it. I get paid good money for it. I think it is work. But that conditioning,
Yes.
it's really bizarre because
Yeah.
because because occasionally, even in today's world, which I know is work, 'cause I get, monetary value placed on it, and I have all sorts of connections, and it's
Yeah.
valued in my workplace, and I'm valued as a employee, as a contractor. I still that little voice in my head saying, "Wow, I can make a living. I am making a living, and I'm living a
Yeah.
life, and So, but that conditioning is very, 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 very strong.
And you do have experiences that reinforce it, that set you back. Like I went back and studied art therapy, um, like a long time ago now. And I know because I have a hand difference, so I was born with one hand. And when I went to the interview, I talked about that. It was, and I was like my 20s. I was still trying to figure out like who I was and where that fit in. Like, and I didn't think it was a particularly good part of me at that time. So I went and did art therapy, and then I basically got told at the interview I was going to scare the people on placement, and they would find it too confronting to deal with my disability. And I remember going out to my car and just crying horrifically. And then we had to give a feedback form, like, because, I had another qualification, a social worker. So this, I had stuff, I had experience, I had a portfolio of artwork, and I actually basically told them where they could shove it if they didn't take me on the feedback. And even then, I was like, you know what? I can do this. And if you don't take me, it's your loss. Because I was so outraged that was and that was someone with a disability too. So,
Oh my God, that's
yeah,
terrible. But I do believe you, because it does actually,
I
unfortunately.
was horrified. And I thought, well, screw you. But
So did you go on to study with them?
I did, but I had to really, like, when I got in, I was really like, well, do I want to be in a place where that's what they think of me? And you always have to be the person that challenges those, barriers all the time. But I did it, and I did well, and I was one of the first to finish. But just that they can have such a stereotype of you that I was horrified.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you would hope that people who have a disability won't be discriminatory, but and like the rest of I have had this conversation. My disability is better or more
Yes,
better than yours. I mean, like,
yes.
how can you think that way? Like,
There's like a hierarchy. And I know in my community, the hand difference community, it's like whether you've acquired it by an accident or whether you were born with it. And there's kind of like who's worse off kind of thing. And I think that happens in a lot of communities. But to me, I think the one thing it's taught me is I don't know what your experience it is. Like, I only know my own. And to be just inquiring about other people and what it means for them and what their experience has been. So, yeah.
The only it's terrible the way disability has this hierarchy. The only thing that makes it better for me is knowing that it's called the Oppression Olympics, which is quite funny, but also appalling.
Like that. Yeah, I know. It's funny. Yeah.
like I actually, mine is actually acquired, and it's in the story on the BIM app, and I often find myself saying, I don't know what it's like to have a before and after. I don't have that grief, and I've heard a lot of people talk about their grief, but I don't have that before and after sort of like scenario. So to me, this is my normal. Like
Yeah.
I'm 6 months old. What would I wouldn't know what was happening to me.
Yeah.
This is my normal, and I suppose when you have the before and after a scenario, they have to come to terms of this is my new normal.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Picking up on something else you said just back before, Julie McNally, just to define the two Julies. Something I've just been thinking about just recently and around, actually, I can't remember how it connects, but talking about, oh, damn it, brain injury, losing my thoughts. But there is this assumption, and it is that, that disabled people often end up getting jobs in the disability sector. And it is sort of assumption we have, but it actually, I realised recently that there are less disabled people employed in the disabled sector than there is in other workplaces, which I think is important to remember because, generally speaking, the disability sector is actually full of non-disabled people and mostly in higher up. But yeah, often the disability workplace is actually not any better than not. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a better place to work than any sector. You might be better going to work for one of the big four banks because they've probably got better disability structures than some of the disability employers in our country.
Because I know for me, I always avoided working in disability because I had that stigma, that internal, well, no, I don't have a disability. That's a bad word, and so I avoided it for my whole career up until I was a Metro Access officer at a council, so doing inclusion. And it was only really then, it was the first time I put my disability on an application form, like in the letter, and I realized working in that community, I met some amazing people that were proud, and I was like, shit, I've never, so it was like a new way of thinking. And since then, I feel very proud and strongly, and it's like that journey. But I think it's true. Like I worked at Disability Resources Centre where everyone has a disability from the board to the staff. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to work there, was because of that. But it was like any other organisation. It didn't mean it did any better. Actually, it often was too proud to think it did it better to make changes, because we all have disabilities. So we do this, well, and you don't want to question it. So, yeah. They're always good conversations to have, I think.
I really love the flexibility of the disability sector.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, we need that flexibility because our health goes up and down like a yo-yo.
Yeah.
And to have that breathing space and knowing you have a job at the end of it is very, very comforting.
Yeah.
But as we said, it isn't a given in the disability sector at all. I think it still remains, unfortunately, with us to do the advocacy and to have to do a lot of the hard work when we look forward to a day when, we don't have to do all that emotional labour, that that non-disabled people are pulling their weight more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving along,
Yes.
I'd love to know a bit more about you.
Yeah.
I was trying to get to that at the beginning because I was thinking it's better to start with the person, but we can start with you at the end. Tell me a bit more about yourself, and you have talked a little bit about yourself, but if you'd like to, or if you're not comfortable with that, maybe what's your vision for disabled people in Victoria?
I think for me, I know something I always feel really, because of growing up with a disability, and not having people around me that were like me or ever seeing them. But I want to see them just because they're part of the normal like thing. So like telly, I want people with disabilities to be characters on shows, and not because they have a disability, but they are there and they happen to have. But, I just want things to reflect more, and for kids to grow up seeing that more would be something I would really like. And that other people and other kids see that as being a bit more, normal too, like an everyday. So, and I think from there, like, that we do have more leaders in the community that have a disability, and that are politicians and in important positions like the NDIA. So, that I want to see more of that. That's kind of my dream. And I think through that, we can have a lot more influence and make change. And just to really question when, and to keep fighting for what's not right. That's also, and for change. So that's what I would like to. And I think that's a big question, but that's, I think for me, that's what I would like to see. So.
Yeah, I'm certainly with you on that one. Yeah. So what are things that you do when you're in your spare time when you're not working?
I know. I'm thinking I'm actually making a cake. I decorate cakes. So for just my friends and families and, with kids and stuff. So I'm doing one for Saturday. So I did foster care for a long time. So one of my foster kids now has grown up and has a child. So doing one, well, she's kind of like family now. So so I like doing that. And I think I have that creative side. So doing things that are an outlet for that they're always important to me. So I like making things and drawing and art, or all things art, and even gardening, that kind of creative kind of thing. So
did you ever end up doing art therapy?
No, I didn't actually. I think I then started working in mental, because I did social work first. And so it's something actually, when you thought about the future, one of the things I thought about is I think I'd really like to do more art type stuff, but within the disability kind of community. So I think I never really got to explore it. I've kind of gone off and done other things, and it's something that I think I would like to come back to at some point. But stay in the disability world, I think. So
Oh well, I'll make sure to invite you to my next arts workshop.
All that stuff I love. I think I love all that stuff, and I miss it. So
No, it's gone. I had another question, but it's gone. Julie.
Sorry, I had to excuse myself for a few minutes. I'm not sure how far we've gotten with the questions.
Well, we're sort of wrapping up, unless you've got.
No. Have we talked about any dreams in the future, or?
Yeah, give us another dream, Julie McNally.
Well, one of my dreams was always go to Paris, and I'm going to Paris later this year. So I've always wanted to. So that's one of the things I'm doing later this year, finally, which will be really good. So
cool. Well, on that note, I'd like to thank Julie McNally and my co-host, Larissa McFarlane, for a very great interview, good interview. So I'll see you again in another 2 weeks. Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Bye. Thanks, Julie. And Julie.
Too many Julies.
Not enough Julies.
Catch us on Your Life, Your Voice YouTube channel, live every Monday fortnight or on demand.
We would like your comments and suggestions on topics that you would like us to explore. Leave your comments on YouTube comments section.
Please feel free to email us on dnd yourlifeyourvoice@gmail.com, or contact us via the Migrant Resource Centre Northwest Region Inc. Phone number 1300 676 044. 1300 676 044.
Diversity in Disability is a project of the Migrant Resource Centre Northwest Region Incorporated, and would like to thank the management for funding this project, especially living through the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has been difficult for people with disabilities